Pete Rose, and Shoeless Joe Jackson, and the entire 8 Men Out have been, if you've ever seen the movie or you know the story about the Black Sox scandal in 1919, were all reinstated to be eligible for the Hall of Fame on Tuesday.
Field of Dreams, baby. Field of Dreams.
The Field of Dreams, obviously, you know, famous movie about Shoeless Joe Jackson. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, personally.
Kevin Costner, James Earl Jones, fantastic actors.
It's hard.
Fantastic.
I found it very hard for a long time not to tear up watching the end of that movie. I think it's one of the best endings of any movie ever. But that aside, this was never supposed to happen. Never ever supposed to happen. There's a bunch of reasons that made that happen. We're not going to get into that specifically. But now, there's a whole bunch to talk about, and if they get in this year. And we know Shoeless Joe is the big name from that, but there were a couple of other guys, I believe, Joba, that were also borderline Hall of Famers as well in that group. They were a World Series team after all. So guys, what do you think? Let's start off with Errol. What do you think about? I mean, we've talked about it a bunch of times on the show.
Pete Rose. Pete Rose should have been a Hall of Fame. Pete Rose should have been a Hall of Famer 40 years ago. Okay, it's pathetic. Baseball. I understand he bet on baseball. So did Shohei Ohtani, and he's still playing in the league. Okay, I don't want to hear it. This guy was, to me, I wasn't alive to watch him. I watched Ichiro Suzuki, but you can argue this guy is the greatest hitter of all time. 4,000 hits. He just dominated at the plate. He averaged almost 2 hits every single game. The guy's a special player. Now, what he does on and off the field, I don't know. What he does on and off the field has nothing to do with his game on the field. The fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame is despicable. Baseball, Bud Selig should be ashamed of himself. How about George Steinbrenner? When is he going into the Hall of Fame? I know Bud Selig's sitting pretty right there after the whole steroid era. Shoeless Joe absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame. It doesn't make any sense. Now, obviously, is another one that was a part of that scandal. I understand they made a movie about it. All these guys, no matter what they did in the past, they were important parts of baseball at some point of their careers. Shoeless Joe could be arguably one of the greatest center fielders of all time. People don't know, kids don't know, because guess what? He's not in the Hall of Fame. So he deserves to be there. And I absolutely believe the one and only Pete Rose should be there. And so many other people that a lot of people have held him back from it. How about Jeff Kent? Now, he has nothing to do with it. Why isn't Jeff Kent in the Hall of Fame? Played multiple positions. He's one of the greatest second basemen we ever seen. Power-wise, can hit, can do everything. Why? Because he's got a big mouth and he's got something to say. So does everybody else. I'm sorry, I had to do that.
It's... The crazy part is, I don't know if you really delved into this because this won't go to vote till December of 27.
Yep.
So the Hall of Fame committee, so they would actually, the first time that they would be eligible to go in is they would be in the 28 Hall of Fame
class,
committee, whatever it is. So they wouldn't even go in now, which is really interesting because why are you waiting this long if you just basically overturned all of this? And you're delaying the inevitable because the committee, because you got to get 12 out of 16 votes. And why are we waiting literally over 2 years as you just announced it?
Yep.
And we're not even in December yet. It's a no-brainer. It really is. I mean, I wouldn't say all that because there's 17 total guys that got reinstated. And I just think They'll probably more than a handful. I wouldn't say we're going to get into double digits, but we're probably going to be, I would say, in the 6-ish range based upon the names, obviously, that were on that list. Two obviously, that should be in anyways, without a doubt. Pete did have a chance to get in. He had a meeting, and he literally said the same thing, so he kind of put himself back into a corner of not being reinstated at the time when he had that conversation, and this was some years ago. But with that being said, he did it when he was a manager. He wasn't a player. And you know, Shoeless Joe, and obviously that's one of my favorite movies too. If you guys haven't seen it, you guys can check that movie out. So those two for sure, and I think there'll be about 3 or 4 more others. But this was long time overdue. I think this should have been done a long time ago.
I think, by the way, I'm sorry to cut you off. I think be put back on that list. Roger Clemens, all those guys that did steroids.
Okay, so that's my point,
yes,
though. So if they're doing this for guys that were, banned now, so now do they go back? Because we've had this conversation before, and everybody as baseball fans and baseball people, it's like, okay, the Mitchell report came out, Balco, all the other stuff. There are gentlemen that were admitted on that report that are in the Hall of Fame. So do they create another list
100%
where it's like, okay, the steroid era with Bonds, Clemens,
Alex Rodriguez.
I love Andy Pettitte. He said one time that he did it. A-Rod, you got, and then there's a handful of guys that was Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire Hall of Famers before steroids? No. Was Barry Bonds a Hall of Famer before steroids?
Yes.
Yes. Was Roger Clemens?
Yes.
Yes. Was Andy Pettitte, and of all people that I have gotten to know, and I'm talking about in general life and professional life, that said he did it once, I firmly, truly, genuinely believe that. And he was coming back off an elbow injury, and obviously really close friends with Roger at the time, and that kind of obviously fell apart based upon, things that transpired, but that's neither here nor there. But this should have been done a long time ago. And when it came out, I was thinking to myself, so do you create another, I guess, what you call it, a category or what have you, where now it's like, okay, we have to do this for the steroid era and these guys that got in, and do we take that into account? So that'll be interesting to see how that happens. Obviously, they added the committee vote, like Lee Smith not getting in, being one of the first guys to get over 400 saves and then having to get in on committee vote. I don't know how they feel about that. Obviously not being voted in by the writers, which who gives a shit, honestly. So it'll be interesting to see how this will transpire, or if it'll move forward to those guys that are deserving to be it, that are basically, we can kind of use a social media term like shadow banned, of like, oh, just because you did this, you're not in. When some of these guys were Hall of Famers before that era even came to fruition.
And how about George Steinbrenner? When's he going in? I don't understand how a guy like that who saved baseball.
I think they hold it against him for what he did with Winfield.
Well, guess what? He did a lot more than
giving him the biggest contract ever.
And by the way, if you ask Dave Winfield, and by the way, if you know the story, when Steinbrenner was on his deathbed, who went to visit him? Who was there at his bed when he was practically almost dead? It was Dave Winfield. So Dave Winfield actually came out. He was one of the guys. Him and Reggie Jackson were two of the last people that got a chance to say goodbye to George Steinbrenner. So what does that tell you about George Steinbrenner and how close he was with the players after everything happened? So I think it's despicable. Bud Selig, why is he in the Hall of Fame?
I just think they always have held that against him. They suspended him. It wasn't like he was contrite about it. It's just something I think. And